Wright is just saying, a bit dramatic. The whole thing was dramatic. It was a very dramatic day.
Yeah, but listen to the commentators saying, drop points at Liverpool.
Yeah.
The fact is, there's not many teams that will go there, that have gone there of that stature, that Liverpool have not caused massive problems to. That's a tough place to go to and get that point. We've got to be happy with that point.
Tim Sherwood and Darren Lewis.
Hey, what's happening, guys?
And we're going to be bringing this kind of energy to the show today. Not just Wrighty's energy, but also the energy of Erling Haaland, who was shaking out his mane.
Wow.
The game against Manchester City. We'll talk about that and what that means for the title race as well. But he's very much worth it, isn't he?
Yeah.
Do you know what? I don't think people really remember the Timotei adverts, but it's got that kind of energy. So that's what we're bringing to today's show. In fact, Tim, you've already tried to channel Erling Haaland. You've very much an influencer in this sort of stuff.
Nice one, Tim.
1995.
Get him.
I was going to criticise him then until I saw that. I thought, well, did I do that?
Well, look, you talked about the significance of that result, and in many ways, it was a really entertaining game. It wasn't a particularly high-quality game at times, and it's a result that helps neither side.
Yeah, but I still think that for a result to go to Liverpool, you know what they are capable of doing at Anfield, to get the point after being 2-0 up, you have to be happy. I think that Arsenal could easily lost that game. The goalkeeper made some great saves. I thought we started well, played how we want to play, and we breached them twice, and I think it was on the run of play. Something had to give for them, but like in the end, like I said, I'm listening to Comsaro. But the fact is, it just feels like you have to be happy with a point at Anfield. You have to be.
Do you know what? I just wonder if this might end up being like a microcosm of Arsenal's season, because if they do end up finishing in second place, you can look at it and go, well, do you know what? Second place is fantastic for where we thought we'd be at the start of the season, but we led for so long. And I think that's maybe the feeling post that game at Anfield as well.
Well, just in the game. I mean, to go there, right, it's right. You get off the bus, you think, you want maximum points, but if we take a point away from here, we're happy. You know, but I haven't been 2-0 up, you know, and cruising in the game. But you always know Liverpool. I mean, they're at the moment, they're very dangerous. They're having a terrible season, but they're dangerous. You know, they've got really dangerous players who can hurt you, and they're party poopers at the moment. They're going to spoil a few parties along the way between now and the end of the season. That's what they did to Arsenal. But they were in so much control. You know, they popped it around them. Martinelli and Saka were outstanding. Odegaard was controlling things in the middle of the park, and they just couldn't hold on. It would have been. I honestly believe it's wide open now. It's certainly wide open. But I think if they would have held on, I think that confidence that would have took them to go to Anfield, come back to, you know, they were really pushing. If you would have held on and won that game 2-1, I would have said pretty much over. I still think Arsenal got a good chance. Of course they have, but it might have dented their confidence a little bit, but it's not disastrous. You know, you know what the mood's like, right? When you go back, if you lose a game, the mood between now and the next game is doom and gloom all the time. It's trying to get the chins up. The manager has to pick up the troops, but he hasn't got to do that now, Mikel. He will say in a cold light of day, he say, look, Anfield, you know, it was intense atmosphere. You know, the momentum was changing.
Look at the positive stuff.
Absolutely, and I think that they will say, well, we're still in the driving seat.
Because the way Daz, you see the way they're talking, you'd think that Arsenal actually lost that game. There's a little bit of like a boom about it, and I still think that's a positive result. It has to be.
But it is a positive result in so much as the attitude of the players hasn't changed, the mentality hasn't changed, the objective hasn't changed, and there's a realisation. And I was in a press conference before the match where Arteta said you don't train in the zoo to go into the jungle. And why he'd said that was because people were talking about that unorthodox technique he used in the documentary, where he had the speakers of the intensity and the noise playing You'll Never Walk Alone or whatever else. And people were talking about it and saying, look, you did get a bit of stick for that. But he said, well, look.
Well, he got a bit of stick for it because they were beaten 4-0.
4-0 in that match.
After that, yeah.
Yes, but my view has always been that in the old days, managers would maybe hear someone say something or write something, pin it up on the dressing room. Now you have younger managers, more techniques. So throughout the course of the documentary, you saw a variety of techniques that he used. You're trying to motivate millionaire footballers, young men, find different ways to give them the same message. And he's given them that message to stunning effect, you have to say, when you consider what they've done so far this season. When you talk about the perception of the result, I mean, this is an editor of a newspaper, so it's us really who are making these
it's your fault.
perceptions.
Driving the narrative.
But you see, the thing is, there has been so much expectation around Arsenal, and they've generated that because they've been so good, so consistent. They were on a run of 6 straight wins. All of the individuals that many people had question marks over, they've been completely different so far this season, not least the likes of Xhaka, for example, who's been a real leader. When Jesus wasn't around, everyone said it would fall apart, and you scored goals and people stepped up. So people expected this to be the last place where you had a bit of unfinished business and you'd go there and you'd sort it out. And there was just disappointment more than anything.
Not one there since 2012.
No, and Arteta was in the team at the time. So it tells you how long ago the whole obstacle has been there. I've always felt that because City have been the course and the distance, that they would come through and win. But I don't think it changes Arsenal's objective at all.
No.
If they go in their next game, for example, and they improve their goal difference, because City's is superior at the moment, then they
Not
give
by
themselves
a huge amount,
only
is it?
by
4 or 5, 4 or 5,
yeah.
yeah.
So then it goes down to the wire. One false move from City, and Arsenal, it's back in their own hands again. But at the moment, it is City.
I mean, it's kind of in Arsenal's hands as well, because if they beat Manchester City, when they it's in both their hands at the same time, because they've got to play each other.
Well, yes and no. I mean, City's record at the Etihad is near invincible. They've lost once and they've drawn once in their last 30 games. It's a very, very tall order to suggest that they're going to do that. Plus, you've got to go to Newcastle as well, the best defence in the country. They're scoring goals for fun now. When they have Bruno Gomes in midfield, they too are near invincible. So it's going to be a tough old task, but I don't think it changes the mentality, the attitude, the objective at Arsenal, because they are still in a very, very good place. And you'd rather be there than anywhere else.
Trying to win the title it's no duck walk, is it? Somewhere you're...
What's a duck walk?
You know,
a cakewalk.
Cakewalk. It's a cakewalk. I was thinking in mind, is it cake or is it duck? I want to say, no, but like, I was thinking of ducks just walking, just like going to the pond. But the thing is, it ain't no cake, and you can't expect...
It ain't a walk in the lake, is it?
You can't expect... What's that to you?
Is duck walk really a thing?
Duck walk. I heard it in a film. Is it cakewalk? Thanks, Dan. It's no cakewalk. It's a cake. What is a cakewalk? Anyway, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
You know, you're getting... This is the stage of the season. It's like, I remember when it was on here with Paul Scholes. He said, this is a stage of the season where everything ramps up. You know, you expect City to be finding their form. You expect someone like Newcastle to get themselves going. No game now you look at is something that you can go to, and those teams are not looking for something. So this is the time. This is what Arsenal, this is what they're trying to do. The second youngest team in the league, Southampton. They've got to get through this period, and it's not going to be easy. You'd expect a team like City to cause the problems they're causing. Of course they are. They're a brilliant team.
Because Manchester City have got the Champions League semi-final, they're only going to play once against Leicester before City and Arsenal face each other at the Etihad. So Arsenal know that they will be top of the table, whatever happens in that game. But that's just an extra game in hand for Manchester City. And like you said, they're looking like they are absolutely invincible at the moment. Every cog in that machine is working smoothly. And that is not a bad run of fixtures between now and the end of the season. Whereas you say, for Arsenal, there are those moments where you think that could be tricky. Well, look, Chelsea played both of them. We don't know what Chelsea are going to be like.
You don't know what Chelsea are going to be like. We know Newcastle. You know, you've got Newcastle there. Yep. You've got Brighton. You know, you look at those games. Obviously, Chelsea, Newcastle, Brighton's going to be the games. You know, you look at those games. It's going to be those games. Arsenal have to go into all of those games believing that they can win them, because it's probably that's what it's going to take. It's going to take that. Because you look at City. Can you see City losing?
I don't think either of them take maximum points between now and the end of the season. I think they both drop points. It's just how many. I think Man City beat Arsenal. And then I think it's where did they drop points elsewhere? Both of them. I look at
City's side there. You look at City's side there, Tim, and I find it very hard with City at the stage of the season where they know what they need to do. I find it very, very difficult for any of those teams to get anything from City. Yeah. Because they know exactly what they've got to do now.
It's just the amount of games, the Champions League, we know how much they want to win it, the FA Cup, you know, they've got loads to play for still, haven't they? And Arsenal just concentrating, obviously, on the FA.
They can have that laser focus.
Vision,
I wonder if people are looking for maybe small parts of the Arsenal machine starting to crumble a bit. I wonder if something like the Xhaka moment in the game against Liverpool yesterday is going to play into people's minds, because he looked as though he'd got that temperament side of the game well under control. He looked like he'd managed to harness it, to use it for the good. But just losing his rag a little bit and getting that booking in, you saw Trent Alexander-Arnold fire up the crowd at Anfield. I just wonder if moments like that might be what can turn these games.
I think you can't say that. For me, you go to Liverpool, and it can be that easy for it to switch. And obviously, for an opposing player to do something like that in that moment, you'd think to yourself, maybe if you look back at that, you wouldn't probably do that. But we're talking about Granit Xhaka, who plays like that. That's how he plays. And like you say, Kelsey, he's somebody that, I think he's very much a leader in that dressing room. He's got a lot of stuff under control. But that's what that game can do to you. It done that to you. It got them going. But at the same time, a Van Dijk tackle can get them going. Anything can get them going. I just feel a little bit sorry for Xhaka simply because the pylon, almost a pylon from people saying, reading the stuff and saying is like, he's costing them the title. It's not right. It's not right to do that for Granit Xhaka, who's not done anything that we wouldn't expect him to do the way he plays and when he's at that level. So I'm with Xhaka on that one. You know why I have to be with him on that one? I probably do the same thing as well. so for me, it's very easy for me to put myself in Xhaka's shoes and then maybe go in the dressing room and think, maybe I shouldn't have done that, guys. But that's how I am. And the guys would say, well, that's how he is. I'm not gonna go with that.
Looking for reasons, aren't they?
Yeah.
But also, there's such small differences, as you say.
I mean, Mikel did it last year, didn't he? Really, we had a flare up with Jurgen on the touchline. The crowd weather up. It's hard to stop that momentum when they're on your side.
And not only that, you really, what you've got to be looking at are the things that you can change. The guy who should have been on the back post stopping Salah for the first goal. The guy who should have prevented the header from, or even the cross coming in, Zinchenko. These are the people who should be looking at themselves today. Not Xhaka for a moment that was in the heat of battle that you could... Any player could have done that, and the fact that it was Xhaka obviously plays into what we call our confirmation bias. It's always him, well... Sometimes it's other players, but the fact that it's him is easy for us in our industry, certainly. But I think there's more disappointment from the neutrals, if you like, that this fair. I mean, it would have been, I would have said, the best story since Leicester 2016, when you consider that nobody gave Arsenal a prayer of competing for the title, and yet they've stopped it from being a procession because Liverpool haven't been as good as they normally are. And City have been outstanding by their, actually underwhelming, but outstanding in building up this run. What is it, 5 wins in a row for the first time so far this season. They've not done it in the Premier League so far. So I don't blame Xhaka.
No. It's just, we've talked about this before, when City have been going head-to-head with Liverpool in previous seasons, there's almost a sense that Liverpool were harnessing all that energy and that's why the Xhaka incident, I think, comes into play, because it's all done with so much emotion, whereas City's MO is to be 100%. Completely cold. Like they talk about, put your head in the freezer or put your head in the fridge or whatever it is they talk about.
You're doing it as well.
Well, there's less difference between a fridge and a freezer than there is between a duck and a cake. In my defence. I can have a duck-shaped cake. But that is the difference. It feels as though City want to take the emotion out of it, because then they will be more consistent. They won't be as thrown by those moments.
Yeah, and the problem is the opponents, Liverpool, they've got nothing to play for. I always look at them and say, where's the motivation now? They're not going for Champions League. They're not going for the Premier League. They're out of the Cups. So where's the motivation to spoil someone else's party? That's what I would be looking. If I was a Liverpool player, you're on the up. You want to spoil it. You want to be nasty. I know you want to be nasty.
Don't you think it's because they're in front of their own fans and there's this demand from the fans at Arsenal, at Anfield? You have to. We want a performance. You have to turn up. You can't produce what you do away from home in front of us. We demand a level of performance because they've been like chalk and cheese. Away from home, they're losing to Brentford and Brighton, and
then they fix themselves up for Liverpool.
Exactly.
And especially you're 2-0 down. You get that situation. The crowd are into it. The crowd. Liverpool want to be. They have to be in it. The crowd. Especially, this is why it's such a great place. Especially when they're going duking it out with City, the crowd are involved in it. And that is one of the things you want to do.
The Emirates as well, isn't it? That's what's happening there. For the first time properly for a full season.
They're involved.
It's felt like that.
Yeah, but the thing with the thing with Liverpool is one of the things you always say is do not get the crowd involved.
Yeah.
You know, so we're talking about, you know, if you're playing and like someone like Tony Adams smashes through Robbie Fowler.
Yeah.
Bam! It's, you know, if he smashes through Michael Owen, bam! The crowd are in it,
Yeah.
and then, a lot of people, Tim, you obviously know, and you know, Kel's watching them, and obviously yourself, Darren, watching Liverpool for years. When they're involved, it's a pressure that you can't seem to get them off. You can't get them off you.
No.
It's like fighting your big brother. He was coming with De Bruyne. It's over when that clicks. It's over. You've got arguably one of the greatest exponents in terms of technical ability and finding space and passing the ball to one of arguably the greatest goal scorers we're about to see.
Does him and De Bruyne remind you of you and Bergkamp?
You know what? I'd like to even dream of scoring that many goals like Erling Haaland's scoring, but in respect of understanding, because I knew with Dennis knew. I remember when we started training, when he first came, because you can't blame Dennis for getting it wrong. He was making that pass, and the pass was kind of hitting me. I wasn't moving quick enough, so the pass was where I should have been, where he's putting the ball, and the pass was already there.
Because that's why I think I asked you this once before. Did you make up his mind where to pass the ball, or did he make up your mind?
The caliber of player we're talking about is that they're kind of players. De Bruyne, I go with Gerrard. I'd say with Bergkamp as well. When they pass it, Scholes. That's where it's meant to be. The Zidane's, Xavi and all that. When they pass it, if it's not got there, it's because it's not been right, because they don't get it wrong the time.
So he taught you to make better runs.
Better runs. And where you're supposed to be by the time he gets himself into a certain position, because it's ready to go with that player. And they're so precise. Yeah. Like I say, at first, I wasn't getting it right when we first started training. Once we got it right, unbelievable.
It's incredible to think that Pep's left him out of a few games as well. I mean, when he's left him out, I mean, Erling must be like, why? You know, it's because he affects his game as well. Because
but you look at De Bruyne,
and they've still got the best partnership in the league, the most productive partnership in the league, with 7 assists.
Yeah, but then, Kels, you look at De Bruyne's, like, at the right time of the season, De Bruyne's ready to go. So Pep doing that, everybody's thinking, because how do you leave Kevin De Bruyne out? He's amazing in every game. Even if he has a 5-minute spell, the game's over. So you look at him and you think to yourself, maybe he needed that little bit of a boost to get himself going again to finish this off.
You see, this is why I felt that but they both got 2 good squads, Arsenal and City. But then it comes down to the coaches, and Pep's got the edge with the experience of having been here before, with the management of the players. I go back to his management of Foden, where he's giving him minutes here, minutes there. And loads of people were saying, including myself, he needs to go out on loan.
I remember, I was one of those.
Yeah, you know, he should be playing regular first-team football. He's such a good player. But his management of Foden's been outstanding. His management of De Bruyne has been outstanding. All season long, he has been on the backs of some of the complacent players at City who possibly think, because they've done it 4 times in the last 5 years, they've arrived. And he's been, even after the Spurs game where he said, you know, even the crowd are a bit complacent. You know, he's been on them all the time. Cancelo, he made a statement by selling him to Bayern and telling the rest of the players, no player is big enough here. Carl Walker the other day rustled him up, said that Rico Lewis is the man, and he said what I expect, Carl Walker can't do it. That's a direct challenge to a Carl Walker. He manages players for this stage of the season. The other day when Haaland scored 5 against Leipzig, and I kind of felt cheated that we didn't get the chance to see if we could score 10.
Yes.
And it seems ridiculous, but you know, he was ripping them apart. Took him off at the weekend after he scored 2.
And then they got a penalty.
Which Tottenham could have scored. Yeah. And you just think to yourself, he's keeping these players hungry. He's keeping these players on the bit so that as they get into this stage of the season, they want it. They're hungry. They're at it. And that's exactly what we're seeing now.
It's great management.
Yeah, never wanting them to be satisfied with what they have, always wanting more.
Yeah.
And they're chasing down that Premier League title, and they are chasing down Arsenal. There is one footnote to the game at Anfield as well, which is the incident between Andy Robertson and the linesman in the game. Now, the PGMOL have said that they're investigating this, and in the meantime, that this linesman is not going to be officiating in any games because of that. So, we can't see for definite whether Andy Robertson makes full contact with the referee from that angle.
That's not good.
And then we look to see whether the assistant could he's saying that he caught him in the chin, but the assistant could conceivably say, I was trying to shrug him off if Robertson has made contact with him. So what's our take on this?
I don't think the contact was enough for him to react like he did, if I'm totally honest, the more I see it, because when I came in feeling like he was moving his arm away from it, but it's the way the arm moved, it looked like it was going towards him. It was very aggressive in the way that he thrust his elbow there, and you can't do that.
So what are we thinking then? Are we looking at something similar to a Mitrovic situation with the official, or are we looking at Bruno Fernandes, who touched the assistant referee and nothing happened? There's inconsistency with players and referees, so it's difficult to work out what the punishment should be for a referee if that's what has happened.
Like Bruno Fernandes at Liverpool, it was a little kind of push as he's running away. I think Mitrovic was more of a kind of like, but this one it's quite aggressive. So if Mitrovic is getting that kind of ban, then the referee's got to get some form of ban. Now people say, yeah, but he wasn't trying to elbow him. I don't care. I think the movement is enough.
Well,
because if a player done that if it was the other way around and we're trying to construe, well, he was trying to move his arm, they wouldn't have it. So we shouldn't have that.
But right, when it's a decision between two players, they would go to VAR and we'd have a look at it in slow-mo and we would freeze it at the point where he's hitting him on the chin with his arm. Now, we could do that with the official there, and when we freeze it, he's actually elbowing Robinson in the chin. So I don't think he's got a leg to stand on.
Yeah, I don't think so neither.
Darren, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a hard one actually, because for once, you know me, I'm full of opinions, but I kind of can't decide whether it was instinctive and he was trying to shrug him off, or whether it was deliberate. Now, none of us will ever know what's in anybody's mind, so we can't determine that. What I found interesting was that the game didn't stop so that we could, because he just continued officiating the game. Now, obviously, he had to, but quite clearly he'd been involved in a flashpoint that was very, very serious. And I just couldn't fathom what there was no provision for what was going to happen after that, which fascinated me anyway. I would hope that this is resolved fairly quickly, because it needs to be for all parties concerned, not least the referee himself. The assistant referee himself. And I think that one of the possible solutions to this is a kind of small exclusion zone around the referee. We're seeing too many players approaching referees full stop.
Yeah, I mean, it's supposed to only be the captain, isn't it, that's allowed to approach the referee, so maybe...
And all of the flashpoints that we've seen involving referees or assistants have involved players approaching them. It doesn't happen if Robertson's not allowed to approach the referee. It doesn't happen if Mitrovic is not allowed to approach the referee. It should just be the captain. No other player should be allowed to get into a referee's face. If we have that, and I think we do need to bring something along those lines in as a matter of urgency to protect officials and the players.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Okay, that's good. Consensus as we head into the break.
Exactly.
Let's have a look at the remaining fixtures then. Manchester City are going to be very busy. They've got the Champions League this week with Bayern Munich, Pep Guardiola's old team. Sheffield United is in the FA Cup. Arsenal have just got the league to look forward to. You will hear tomorrow, it's in City's hands. It's in both their hands because they play each other. So it's in both their hands. Well, after what I'd said to you about Anfield today, is that a point gained for Arsenal or 2 dropped because they were 2-0 up?
I don't think it's 2 dropped. I think you've got to watch the game, and you summed it up perfectly. And I think Jurgen Klopp, when he got asked the question, was sort of, his head was spinning because he got asked, could you have won the game? Could you have lost the game? And it was like, all of it.
Yes, because all of the above.
All of the above, because it was crazy. So I'm not in the school of thought where it was 2 dropped. I think Liverpool were amazing second half. Arsenal could have easily lost it. Yep. And maybe Arsenal last season would have lost it. So it shows the fight. Jesus was standing up to players. Granit Xhaka was standing up to players. They've got that in them. So as Arteta said, the jungle, you go away to Liverpool in that atmosphere in the second half while they're kicking towards the Kop end. I think you come away from that with loads of pride. I think your unbeaten run is intact. I think confidence is still high. You've gone to Anfield. You've got a point. You move on to West Ham.
That's interesting, Glenn. You look at that. So obviously if City with their game in hand, they go to 70. Then if they beat Arsenal, they would go to 73 and their goal difference is better. So that's why I say it's in both their hands now. City have obviously got the experience. They roughly dropped 4 to 5 points, Guardiola's team, in this stretch. Arsenal have not been in this stretch before, not in terms of trying to win the league.
Well, do you remember last year?
Top 4. They dropped 13 points in this stretch.
I can remember sitting here last year, and I think we put a graphic up with 12 games to go, and it was Liverpool and Man City. And it was like, right, who's going to drop any points? Who's going to beat Liverpool or who's going to beat Man City? Both of them never lost in the 12 games. That's how strong City can be.
So would you lean towards City?
Reluctantly, yes. They just seem like they've hit their groove. I've been waiting for it for a long time, and now it seems... I think the only thing you've got to think, and the caveat you've got to think, is that they're fighting on 3 fronts, whereas Arsenal are fully focused on the Premier League. There'll be plenty of twists.
I think with Guardiola, I think there was a period, I mean, the Spurs game comes to my mind, where he had Ruben Diaz on the bench, he had Gundogan on the bench, he had De Bruyne on the bench. All these players now, he's starting them every single week. That's his strongest 11.
Now, the big question is, where does this leave the title race? We've explained the gap is 6 points. We've explained that City have got a game in hand. And, of course, Arsenal have to go to the Etihad. So, here we go for Arsenal. They're away at West Ham next. Then at home to the bottom club, Southampton. Then they go to the Etihad. Then it's Chelsea, Newcastle away, Brighton at home, Forest away in the last day of the season, Wolves at home. City, of course, as we know, still in 2 other competitions. Those 2 massive games against Pep Guardiola's former club, Bayern Munich, home and away, sandwiched in between a home game against second from bottom Leicester. Then an FA Cup semi-final against Sheffield United, the Championship at Wembley. Then the trip to the Etihad. So City have to play 4 times before they face Arsenal at the Etihad. Then City go to Fulham. They have to play West Ham as well. Leeds at home, Everton away, Chelsea at home, Brentford away. Brighton away is still to be rearranged as well. And I should also point out the weeks beginning the 9th and 16th of May, should they beat Bayern Munich, they will have Champions League semi-finals to squeeze in as well.
That could be key. I really believe that. The amount of games...
They could have almost twice as many games.
Yeah, that's key, how they get on against Bayern. I think that could be really, really crucial. Arsenal just got to keep going, keep doing what they're doing.
They've got a big squad, haven't they? They can handle that amount of games. If it was the other way round, I'd say it's Arsenal's for the taking, to be honest with you.
So from Arsenal's point of view, you want City and the FA Cup final?
Absolutely. Let them win it all apart from the Premier League, the big one.
Let's go back to Ray. Ray, you having a look at those fixtures with confidence, or...?
Well, yeah, they're going to be difficult. I mean, we look at Newcastle away. It was always going to be a difficult game. I was at Brentford yesterday. Great second-half performance from Newcastle. They're going for that 4th Champions League spot, so that's going to be a difficult one. Obviously, we know about Manchester City. That's always going to be a difficult game. It's the most important game now for Arsenal is West Ham away next week, because it's always one game. And I know it's an old cliche, but you just got to worry about the next game and don't worry about what's going on. Just try and get 3 points on at the London Stadium next Sunday. So that's a crucial game now. And obviously, you've got the Southampton game on the Friday night as well. So 6 points in the next 2 games, and just hope. And I think Danny's right. I mean, Champions League football is very important for Manchester City. So these 2 games against Bayern are massive for the club. That's the one Pep Guardiola wants, the Champions League. And I'm hoping, like Tony says, they get to the final and win it. And hopefully don't be too greedy and let Arsenal win the Premier League.
Tony's told us his first experience. You're saying take one game at a time, but before your first title, when you get to April, it's the natural thing, isn't it, to pick up the fixtures and think, oh, surely as a player it's hard to concentrate on just West Ham next.
Well, yeah, my first title was in 97, 98, and I remember we had a big game of Blackburn away, and Blackburn were a difficult side at Ewood Park. But, that was the game where we went there and we managed to get a 4-1 win. So there's certain games when you look at away, could be a banana skin, and I'm sure Manchester United were looking at that Blackburn game as well to say, this could be the time when they do drop points and leaves the door open for us. So I'm sure Mikel Arteta will target certain games, but, I'm looking at the running. There's a lot of teams in the relegation battle for both sides who they're going to play against, who, fighting for their lives. So it'd be interesting to see how they get on. But as I said before, it's another point towards that title. And whatever happens, I know they probably ain't going to get a better chance to win the league. But what a great season they've had. I mean, the connection with the fans as well. The atmosphere was so good here today. The Arsenal fans really got behind their team as well. And, it's been a fantastic season so far. But... Liverpool are going to be better next year. Chelsea could be better next year. All those sides are going to be better. So you might not get a better chance to win it this year if you're an Arsenal player.
And you say that point in time may be important who knows? We've seen in the past big moments. Could that Ramsdale save from Konate be one of those moments to take something from today?
Absolutely. I thought he was magnificent in that second half. And like Tony, I thought he might have headed it, maybe. He's gone down, but I'm not going to question it. It's split second. You've got to make that big decision. I know he's a defender. Maybe it was a striker, would have just headed it in, no problem. But that was a massive save, it really was. And like Tony says, that little bit right at the end, that deflection was going in that top corner, and Ramsdale managed to get himself across. And he's done that on many occasions this season. He's been brilliant for Arsenal in goal. And as I said before, you've always got to have a good goalkeeper if you're going to have any chance of winning the title. And certainly Aaron's proving that he is a top-class goalkeeper.